Hi kids, this is Miss Amiot again, and I'm going to read another book to you. I read one of the Little House books to my class already, and they seem to really like it. So I'm going to read this one. This is called Winter Days in the Big Woods. It's one of my first Little House books. And if you remember, we talked a little bit about this family, Laura Ingalls Wilder and her family, and they lived over 100 years ago, and these are stories about her childhood. So remember, 100 years ago, they didn't have electricity, they didn't have running water, they didn't have toilets, they didn't have a bathtub, they didn't have their own bedrooms even. They all shared one room. Their house had one room. No grocery stores, no cars, nothing like that. So they had wagons and horses. And then they had to farm or hunt for their food. So we're going to read a little bit about the beginning of her life, called Winter Days in the Big Woods. And this says, adapted from the Little House books by Laura Ingalls Wilder, illustrated by Renee Graff. Graff. All right. So that's the little house there. Look at, there's a deer. We have deer in our backyard sometimes. And turkeys. So there she is right there. Once upon a time, a little girl named Laura lived in the big woods of Wisconsin in a little house made of logs. You know, Wisconsin is right close to Minnesota. It's the next state over, and she actually lived in Minnesota for a long time too. But in this story, it took place in Wisconsin. She lived in the little house with her pa, her ma, her big sister Mary, her baby sister Carrie, and their good old bulldog Jack. So there's their dog, Jack. And there's Ma and baby Carrie. And there's her big sister, Mary. And there's Pa. It looks like Mary and Pa are bringing in the firewood because they would have had a fireplace inside their house to do both their cooking and heating. There's Pa right there. Winter was coming to the big woods, and soon the little house would be covered with snow. Pa went hunting every day so they would have meat during the long, cold winter. Ma, Laura, and Mary gathered potatoes, carrots, beets, and turnips, cabbages and onions, peppers and pumpkins from the garden next to the little house. So remember, I said no grocery stores. They have to either grow everything or hunt everything that they eat. And no supermarkets mean no shops for clothes either. They had to make their own clothes and their own toys. By the time winter came, the little house was full of good things to eat. Laura and Mary thought the attic was a lovely place to play. They played house by using the round orange pumpkins as tables and chairs, and everything was snug and cozy. The first snow came. It was very cold. In the mornings, the windows were covered with beautiful frost pictures of trees and flowers and fairies. Look, they're using their imaginations to see those things. Ma said that Jack Frost came in the night and made pictures while everyone was asleep. Laura and Mary were allowed to use Ma's thimble to make pretty patterns of circles in the frost. That's a thimble right there. It was a metal, like a little metal cup that Ma would wear on her finger when she was sewing so that she wouldn't poke her finger with the needle. It's called a thimble. In the mornings, Laura and Mary helped Ma wash the dishes and make the beds. After this was done, Ma began the work that belonged to that day. Each day had its own proper work, and Ma would say, wash on Monday, iron on Tuesday, mend on Wednesday, churn on Thursday, clean on Friday, bake on Saturday, rest on Sunday. So look, they've got a candle here, and that was a light that they would use. And she's got two big basins for washing dishes. And they're washing by hand and drying by hand. So they didn't have a dishwasher. See the cabinet up there? Pa would have had to build everything that they had. All their furniture, everything. Watch this, what they're doing here. Laura liked churning and baking days best of all. Ma had to churn the cream for a long time. So they would have had a cow, and they milked the cow, and then they make the cream into butter. Mary could sometimes churn while Ma rested, but Laura was too little. So that stick, it's got a hole in the middle like a donut, like a hole in the middle of that, the lid. And then they would move the stick up and down, and it has a paddle on the inside. And they would move it up and down and up and down and up and down until the cream turned into butter. And there's Ma taking a break with the baby on her lap. On Saturdays, when Ma made bread, Laura and Mary each had a little piece of dough to make into a little loaf. Ma even gave them a bit of cookie dough to make little cookies. So this was their version of Play-Doh. Remember how I said they have to make all their own toys? After the day's work was done, Ma would sometimes cut out paper dolls for Laura and Mary. She drew their faces on with a pencil and cut dresses and hats and ribbons out of colored paper so that Mary and Laura could dress their dolls beautifully. There's the baby in her bed. And that would have been an oil lamp, and it has like a fire inside of it that gives them light. But the best time of all was night when Pa came home. He would throw off his fur cap and coat and mittens and call out, "Where's my little half pint of sweet cider half drunk up?" And that was Laura because she was so small. Your dad or your mom have fun little names for you, little nicknames. Look, there's the candle that's lit. So they did not have TV or internet or movies or Netflix or video games, none of that. This is how they entertained themselves. Sometimes Pa would take down his fiddle and sing. Pa would keep time with his foot, and Laura and Mary would clap their hands to the music when he sang, "Yankee Doodle went to town, he wore his striped trousies, he swore he couldn't see the town, there were so many houses." Other times, Pa would tell stories. When Laura and Mary begged him for a story, he would take them on his knees and tickle their faces with his long whiskers until they laughed out loud. His eyes were blue and merry. Outside it was cold and snowy, but the little log cabin was snug and cozy. Pa, Ma, Laura, Mary, and baby Carrie were comfortable and happy in their little house in the big woods. So there they are. So this kind of reminds me of quarantine, you know. They're stuck at home all winter long, and they don't go out, and they don't have anywhere to go. There's nothing to entertain them. They have to find ways to entertain themselves and take care of themselves. And no neighbors close by. Kind of like living in the 1800s, huh? So that's the end of that story. And there's lots more Little House books too. So, the end.